She publicly humiliated me at a party, saying I wasn't alpha enough, so I simply stopped existing in her world. At our friend's wedding, she saw me with a woman who actually respects me and had a meltdown in the parking lot. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The first crack appeared not with a scream, but with a sigh. It was 2 months before the party that would end everything, and I was helping our friend Dave set up for his grill out. Qley was draped over a patio chair, scrolling through her phone, her drink sweating onto the armrest. You know, for a guy who designs buildings, you're surprisingly bad at assembling a cheap charcoal grill, she said, not looking up from her screen. I glanced up from the confusing, multilingual instructions. It's the principle of the thing. The design is flawed. The design is fine. You're just overthinking it, like you do everything. She finally looked at me, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a look I'd become familiar with, a thin veneer of affection over a layer of gentle disappointment. I got the grill going eventually. That was my role, the reliable one, the fixer. For 4 years, I'd been Qley's steady hand. When her car broke down, I was the one who arranged the tow and dealt with the mechanic. When she was stressed about work, I was the one who cooked her favorite meal and listened for hours. I built a stable, comfortable life for us, brick by brick, and I thought she was happy living in it. That afternoon, a guy named Jake arrived. He didn't so much enter the backyard as he occupied it. He pulled up in a motorcycle, the engine a loud, aggressive cough that silenced the casual chatter. He was all broad shoulders, loud laughter, and a practiced swagger. He clapped Dave on the back with a force that looked painful and immediately started holding cord around the cooler. I watched Qley watch him. Her posture straightened. The bored look on her face was replaced by a sharp, focused interest. Later, as I was bringing out a plate of burgers, I overheard her talking with her friend Sarah by the fence. I mean, I love how secure Alex is, Qley was saying, her voice a confidential murmur I wasn't supposed to hear. He's my rock. But sometimes I wish he had a little more of that dominant energy, you know? That fire. Jake seems like he just takes what he wants. Sarah laughed. A rock is great, honey, but sometimes you want a volcano. I stood there for a moment, the paper plate warm in my hand. A rock. Secure. The words should have been compliments, but in her mouth, they sounded like synonyms for dull. I finished my task, said my goodbyes, and when Qley decided she wanted to stay longer with the fun crowd, I just nodded and went home alone. The crack didn't widen that night, but I'd felt it. A hairline fracture in the foundation of us. The main event, the collapse, happened at Lisa's birthday party 2 months later. The air in her apartment was thick with body heat, and the bass of music I didn't recognize. I'd spent most of the night orbiting Qley, who was, as usual, orbiting Jake. He was telling a story about a business deal, his voice booming over the music. And I looked the guy dead in the eye and said, 50? Try 70, or I walk and take the Beijing contacts with me. He folded like a cheap suit. Jake took a long swallow of his beer, his eyes scanning his audience to make sure they were properly impressed. Qley was mesmerized. I came up beside her, handing her the fresh gin and tonic she'd asked for 20 minutes ago. She took it without looking at me, her eyes still locked on Jake. Thanks, babe. It was an automated response. You having fun? I asked. She murmured, not hearing me at all. Jake finished his story to a round of forced laughter from his captive audience. His eyes landed on Qley, then flicked to me with a smirk. Everything all right over here, champ? You look a little lost. I'm good, I said, my voice even. Just checking in. Qley finally turned to me, but her expression was sharp, embarrassed. He's fine, Jake. Alex is always fine. She said the word fine like it was a terminal diagnosis. The conversation ebbed and flowed around us. I tried to engage, to ask Jake about his business, but my questions, what exactly he did, what the business was called, were met with vague, grandiose answers about disruption and leveraging assets. Qley hung on every word. Then came the moment. The music dipped between songs, and Jake was holding forth on the importance of alpha energy in business. It's a jungle out there, he declared. You're either the predator or the prey. There's no in-between. Qley, emboldened by her third drink and a desperate need for his approval, decided to use me as a stepping stone. You know, Alex, she said, her voice suddenly loud and clear, cutting through the ambient noise. Several people nearby turned to look. Maybe you should take some notes from Jake. This is what real ambition looks like. This is what it means to actually go for it. A cold stillness settled over me. The world seemed to narrow to the space between her, me, and Jake. The party's noise faded into a dull roar. I kept my voice calm. I'm happy with my path, Qley. I like building things that last. She let out a sharp, mocking laugh. That's the problem. You're always happy with whatever. You never fight for anything. You never want more. She gestured at Jake, a sweeping, dramatic motion. You're just safe. A safe, comfortable, boring bet. I need a real man who knows what he wants and just takes it. The words hung in the air, toxic and final. Safe. Boring. She'd said the quiet part out loud, and she'd done it in front of everyone. I saw Lisa's hand fly to her mouth. Dave looked down at his shoes, ashamed for me. Jake smirked, putting a possessive arm around Qley's shoulders. Some guys are just born followers, babe. Can't teach that killer instinct. Everyone looked at me. They expected a scene. They expected me to yell, to plead, to get into a chest-thumping contest with Jake. That's what the script called for. I didn't follow the script. I looked directly at Qley. Her face was flushed, a mixture of triumph and nervous adrenaline. She had wanted a reaction. She wanted to provoke the fire she thought I lacked. I felt nothing. No anger, no pain. It was as if her words had surgically removed the part of me that cared. The love I felt for her simply evaporated, leaving behind a perfect, silent clarity. I nodded just once. My voice was quiet, but it carried in the stunned silence. I see. I set my half-finished beer bottle carefully on a nearby bookshelf. I didn't look at Jake. I didn't look at any of our muttering, gawking friends. I just walked to the hall closet, retrieved my jacket, and walked out the front door. The last thing I heard was Qley's voice, confused and suddenly unsure, calling after me. Alex, where are you going? Don't be so dramatic. The door clicked shut behind me, cutting her off. The cool night air hit my face. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away without a single glance in the rearview mirror. The rock she'd taken for granted had just rolled away for good. The silence in my apartment that night was a physical thing. It wasn't empty. It was full of a final, decisive clarity. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I felt clean, as if a tumor I hadn't known I was carrying had been neatly excised. I slept deeply for the first time in months. The next morning, I was methodical. I packed a go bag, a week's worth of clothes, toiletries, my passport, and my important documents. I was operating on a calm, focused autopilot. I knew the script. I just had to wait for my cue. It came at 11:17 a.m. The lock in the front door turned, and Qley walked in. She looked tired, hungover, and armed with a defensive irritation. She found me in the living room, sitting in my armchair, drinking coffee. My go bag was by the door. Are you seriously still mad about last night? She began, dropping her purse on the counter with a thud. God, Alex, can't you take a joke? You were being so antisocial. I took a slow sip of coffee. It wasn't a joke. And I'm not mad. Then what's with the silent treatment and the dramatic exit? She scoffed, putting her hands on her hips. If you have something to say, man up and say it. I am, I said, my voice disturbingly even to my own ears. I'm leaving. You made it perfectly clear what you value, and it's not me. It's not this. I gestured vaguely at the apartment we'd shared for 3 years. Her eyes widened, then narrowed in confusion. This wasn't following the established pattern. I was supposed to be hurt, to seek reassurance, to beg for a return to the status quo. My calm was more disconcerting to her than any anger could have been. So you're breaking up with me? She asked, her voice rising an octave. Over one comment. You're being pathetic. It was a party, Alex. People say things. No, I corrected her gently. You ended this last night, in front of all our friends. I'm just making it official. The word official seemed to trigger a different, more entitled anger in her. Her face hardened. Fine, go. See if you can find anyone else who'll put up with your passive bullshit. You think you're too good for me? You think you can do better? I didn't answer. I just watched her, which infuriated her more. You know what? She spat, grabbing for the nuclear option she thought would shatter my composure. Jake and I are going to Miami next week anyway. He booked us a suite. So don't think you're leaving me with nothing. I simply nodded. I hope you have a nice time. My utter indifference was the final straw. She let out a sound of pure frustration, snatched her purse back up, and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. The silence returned, more profound than before. I stood up. My movements were precise, unhurried. I took the key I had already placed on the kitchen counter, walked to the front door, and slid it under the gap into the hallway. It landed with a soft, metallic click. Then, I picked up my bag, walked out, and closed the door behind me for the last time. I didn't look back. There was nothing in that apartment for me anymore. It was just a set from a play that had ended. My first stop was a cell phone store. I got a new number. In the parking lot, I went through my contacts, blocking her number, her email, and all her closest friends on every social media app one had. I was a ghost, erasing his own footprints. I'd already rented a small, furnished apartment across town the day after the grill-out incident, a quiet, just-in-case plan my architect's brain had insisted on. I moved in that afternoon. The space was blank, anonymous, and utterly mine. There were no memories here, no echoes of disappointment, just quiet potential. I sat on the floor, leaning against the bare wall, and let the silence breathe. The unfairness of it all was a fact, not a feeling. I had been loyal. I had been committed. I had built a life for us, and she had treated it, and me, as a consolation prize. But the anger didn't come. Instead, a profound sense of peace settled over me. The problem was solved. The equation was balanced. I was zero, and zero had no baggage. The first wave of communication came that same night, as I knew it would. My old phone, now relegated to a desk drawer as a backup, lit up with a voicemail notification. I listened, my expression unchanging. Beep. Alex, it's me. Look, I'm sorry I stormed out. But you can't just leave. This is our home. Call me back so we can talk about this like adults. This is ridiculous. Her tone was a mixture of annoyance and performative maturity. She still believed this was a negotiation. I deleted the voicemail. The text started the next day, a digital barrage against my fortress of silence. Unknown number. You're really going to ignore me? After 4 years? You're such a child. Unknown number. I'm staying at Sarah's. Jake's trip got moved up. We leave for Miami tomorrow. Have fun being alone. Unknown number. You're really going to let me go to another country upset? Unbelievable. I watched them come in, one after another. They were like stones thrown into a deep, still well. I heard the impact, but the well was too deep for them to disturb the water at the bottom. After the third one, I blocked the number. A week of blessed silence passed. I settled into a new routine. I went to work. I came home to my quiet apartment. I started reading again. I went to the gym. The world, I discovered, was remarkably peaceful when it wasn't being filtered through Qley's constant, low-grade dissatisfaction. Then, the second wave hit. A new number. The tone had shifted. New unknown number. Alex, please. I know it's you reading this. We need to talk. Miami was the mistake. New unknown number. Jake is not what I thought he was. He's so aggressive. He yelled at a waiter, and it was so embarrassing. Can we please just talk? New unknown number. I'm back. I'm at the apartment. Where are all your things? Your closet is empty? What the hell? I could almost see the panic setting in. The alpha energy she craved was showing its true colors. It was just aggression. The volcano she wanted was starting to scorch her. I didn't respond. My silence was my answer. A few days later, her mother, Carol, called my new number. I had anticipated this. The flying monkey deployment. Alex, this is Carol. Her voice was sharp, laced with the same entitlement her daughter possessed. What is the meaning of this? Qley is heartbroken. You can't just abandon her and empty your shared home without a conversation. It's incredibly cruel. Hello, Carol, I said, my voice polite but sterile. This is a matter between Qley and me. It's being handled. I'd appreciate it if you'd respect that this is no longer your concern. There was a sputter on the other end of the line. Not my concern. She is my daughter. We treated you like family. And I appreciated that. I said, the finality in my tone absolute. Goodbye, Carol. I hung up. The text from Qley's new number became more desperate, the facade crumbling completely. New unknown number. Please. I'm not doing well. He scares me. I left him at the airport. I need you. New unknown number. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I see everything clearly now. You were my rock. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. New unknown number. The rent is due. I can't afford this place on my own. You know that. Please, I'm begging you. The word begging should have stirred something in me. Pity, perhaps, or a sense of victory. It didn't. It just was. A statement of fact. Her consequences were arriving, and they were hers alone to manage. I didn't block this number immediately. I let the messages sit there, unread after the first glance. They were a weather report from a storm I had already evacuated. I was safe and dry and moving on. Her desperation was not my emergency. The desperate texts eventually stopped. The silence from my end was an impenetrable wall, and she had finally, it seemed, stopped throwing herself against it. I used the piece to build. My new apartment became a home. I framed prints I liked, bought a couch that was comfortable without being stylish, and cooked meals that I enjoyed. The silence was no longer empty. It was filled with my own choices. I reconnected with friends who had always been mine first, not ours. I took a weekend trip to the mountains with Dave, who, after a few beers, admitted, "Dude, what she did at that party, it was fucking savage. Everyone thought so. We just didn't know what to say." It was a small validation, but I didn't need it anymore. The court of public opinion had become irrelevant to me. Work became a refuge of pure logic and creation. I threw myself into a new project, a modern library, and the designs that flowed out of me were sharper, more innovative, more me than anything I'd produced in years. It was as if removing the constant, low-grade stress of managing Qley's happiness had unlocked a part of my brain. A month into my new life, I met Maya. It happened at a gallery opening for a local artist, an event I'd never have attended with Qley, who found such things pretentious. Maya was there alone, too, a freelance architect I'd seen at a few industry functions, but never properly spoken to. We got talking about the structural impossibility of one of the sculptures and ended up debating over coffee for an hour. She was sharp, witty, and had a calm confidence that didn't require an audience. There was no performance. It was just conversation. Easy, mutual respect. We started seeing each other. It was slow, simple, and devoid of drama. She had her own life, her own passions, and she admired mine. We were two complete circles overlapping, not two broken pieces trying to fit together. It was during this period of quiet growth that the third and final wave of communication hit. It began not with a plea, but with a summons. An email to my work address, a channel she knew I couldn't block. From Qley Anderson. Subject, Lisa's wedding. Alex, I know you're getting this. I assume you received the physical invitation to Lisa and Ben's wedding. I'm going. It's important we talk there. We have too much to hash out, and you avoiding me is immature. We shared a life for 4 years. You owe me at least a conversation. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be. Qley, I read it once, then archived it. The entitlement was breathtaking. You owe me. The calculus of her world was forever one-sided. I had given 4 years of loyalty and support. She had given public humiliation and betrayal. And in her mind, I was the one in debt. I had, in fact, received the invitation. I'd already RSVP'd days earlier. For one, with a +1. I'd asked Maya, and she'd agreed with a warm smile. The week before the wedding, the last, pathetic volley came. A voicemail on my old phone, her voice thick with tears that sounded real, but were now just another tool. Beep. Alex, it's me. God. He hit me. Jake. He slapped me at a bar because he thought I was flirting with the bartender. I have nowhere to go. My friends are sick of me. My mom just says, I told you so. You're the only good person I've ever known. You have to help me. You have to please. I have nothing left. There it was. The ultimate play. The consequence of her choice had become violent, and she was presenting the bill to me, her former emotional safety net. I felt a distant, clinical pity for the situation, the same way I might feel reading about a stranger in the news. But sympathy? The urge to rescue her? It was gone. Her well-being was no longer my responsibility. Her crisis was not my emergency. I deleted the voicemail. Then I took my old phone, placed it in a drawer, and forgot about it. The ghost of my old life had spoken its last words. The night before the wedding, I laid out my suit. Maya was sleeping over at her place, and we'd agreed to meet there. As I looked at my reflection in the dark window of my apartment, I didn't see the man Qley had humiliated. I saw someone calmer, stronger, and undeniably happier. I was no longer a rock for someone to stand on or complain about. I was the foundation of my own life. And tomorrow, she would see it. Lisa's wedding was at a vineyard, all soft sunlight and rolling green hills. It was beautiful. I felt calm as I walked in, Maya's hand resting comfortably in the crook of my arm. She wore a simple emerald green dress that made her look both elegant and approachable. "We can leave whenever you want," she murmured, giving my arm a slight squeeze. She knew the basics of the situation. "I'm exactly where I want to be," I said, and meant it. We found our table. I saw Dave, who gave me a wide grin and a thumbs up from across the room. I saw other mutual friends. There were hesitant smiles, curious glances at Maya, and then nods of approval. The air of pity I'd feared was absent. Instead, there was a quiet respect. I didn't have to look for Qley. I felt her arrival. A shift in the atmosphere, a small vortex of tension. She came in alone, wearing a dress that was a little too tight, a little too try-hard. She looked thin and drawn. Her eyes scanned the room, frantic, before landing on me. On us. The look on her face was a complex cocktail of shock, rage, and utter devastation. Maya was, by any objective measure, an upgrade. She possessed a quiet, self-assured grace that Qley's performative femininity could never touch. Qley spent the ceremony staring at the back of my head. I could feel the heat of her gaze, but I kept my eyes forward, my hand resting on Maya's. At the reception, we danced. We laughed. We talked with friends. I was present, genuinely enjoying myself. I wasn't performing happiness for Qley's benefit. I was simply living it. And that was the most powerful statement of all. It was as the party was winding down that she made her move. I was getting our coats when I saw her hovering near the lobby entrance. "Alex," her voice was a fragile thing. "Can we talk? Please? Just for a minute." I looked at her. Really looked. The bright lights of the lobby were less kind than the soft reception lighting. She looked exhausted. "Okay," I said. I led her not to a private corner, but to a quiet, well-lit alcove near the front doors, public, but not performative. She hugged herself, shivering despite the warm night. "Who was that?" she asked, her voice tight. "You're rebound." "That's Maya," I said, my tone neutral, factual. "My girlfriend." "You moved on fast," she accused, the fragility cracking to reveal the steel bitterness beneath. "I guess I meant nothing to you." "You meant everything," I said, and watched her flinch as if struck. "Until you showed me, very clearly, that I didn't." Her face crumpled. "I was stupid. That guy was a monster. You were right, okay? You were right about everything. He hit me." Her tears started then, real and messy. "You would never. God, you would never do that. I was so stupid. I'm sorry that happened to you," I said. The words were correct, but delivered with the detached tone of a doctor giving a prognosis. No one deserves that. A flicker of hope lit in her wet eyes. "So, what now? Can we?" "I've learned, Alex. I've changed. There is no we, Qley," I said, the finality like a stone door closing. "There hasn't been for months." "But you loved me," she cried, her voice rising. "You said you'd always be there for me." "I loved who I thought you were," I clarified. "The real you showed up at Dave's party and made everything very clear." I believed her. It was then that Maya approached, her timing impeccable. She didn't look at Qley, her focus entirely on me. "The car's here whenever you're ready," she said softly, her hand coming to rest on my arm again, a gesture of pure, uncomplicated solidarity. "I'm ready," I said, turning back to Qley one last time. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Truly, it was the ultimate dismissal. Not angry, not vengeful, sincere. And that was what broke her completely. "You're really choosing her over me?" she shrieked, the sound echoing in the marble lobby. A few departing guests turned to stare. After everything we had, after 4 years, I looked at her, this woman who had once been the center of my universe, and felt nothing but a distant echo of a forgotten feeling. She was a stranger, yelling in a lobby. I shook my head, a faint, almost sad smile on my lips. "I'm not choosing her over you, Qley." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I'm choosing myself." For the first time in years, I'm choosing myself. I turned, and with Maya by my side, I walked out of the lobby into the cool, clear night. I didn't look back. I didn't hear the rest of her meltdown. I just closed the car door, the sound a perfect, full stop to the sentence of our relationship. As we drove away, I felt Maya's hand find mine. I looked over at her, at the peaceful, strong profile of the woman beside me, and then out at the city lights, bright and full of promise. The past was gone. The future was mine, and it had never looked brighter. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.